Welcome back to the Aussie Shed, ladies and gentlemen, for another episode of Project Fairlady. And might I say, a Happy New Year to you all. So over the holidays, I've been busy working on the Fairlady whenever I've had time to do so. One of the main things that I'm focusing on, and have been focusing on for quite a while, is heat management in the engine bay of the Fairlady. Due to the fact that so much of the original stuff was so badly heat affected, which is certainly understandable if you know these vehicles and you're aware of the layout with everything and what they had available to them back in the late 80s, early 90s when these vehicles were built. So guys, if you'd like to come with me, this is going to be a bit of a tight squeeze, but I'm going to go under and up into the engine bay, so I'll have to hold the camera right back. Hasn't got a real great wide angle on this camera, but it is better than my phone. I'll give you a bit of a look at what I'm doing and some heat shields that I'm currently working on. It's very tight in here, but we'll see what we can do. So currently, like I say, heat shields is what I'm working on. I've refitted the exhaust and the dump pipes just to give me an idea where most of the heat's being generated in the vehicle. And as you can see over this side, this is something I spoke about in one of the last videos, how I was trying to reuse the factory heat shield over the new fuel lines and everything, which I've managed to do. Part of these heat shields were missing. This section here I didn't have. I've since tracked one of those down. And this lower section here, I have made some slight modifications to it to get it on there. So it covers just about everything. The pipe that's hanging out of the bottom here is actually the evap line to the evap canister in the front, and it is actually covered with silicon coated fiberglass heat sleeving anyway. And just peeking out under there is the AN6 fuel return line. Again, it has its own heat sleeve anyway. So these things, I guess they're probably not really necessary, but if you have them, might as well use them. Another thing that I have going on here, this is my my feed line to the fuel rails. This is an AN8 that comes up here and then splits. You can see it's fairly close to the back of this downpipe here, and it will tend to cop quite a little bit of heat. Also, the AC lines that are above it, you can see the work I've already done to put some heat protection on those, some heat management, which will do a good job, but a physical heat shield will do a lot there. So that's the current project. I'm starting to work on a cardboard template to build a heat shield to cover this, and then kind of step up and shield over that, and then go back down. So I've got this fixing here that I can use, and there's another one up in behind there which you can't really see. So then going across to this side over here, you can see this new heat shield here that I've done. Sorry for the wobbly camera, just trying to get myself in position. So this is the factory shield that is in this position here. You can see it's quite small, and it has a bit of a gap in the center of it. Now that's for the clutch line to come down to here, but my clutch line is a different setup. It's a one-piece unit that's going to be mounted in a different position. So basically this is too small and got a hole in it, and it's really not ideal for our current situation. So what I've done is I've made this. Now this is some twin wall aluminium heat shielding stuff that you can just buy online. There's good versions and there's cheaper versions. This is one of the name brand versions of the stuff. It's quite firm, as you can see. It's not going anywhere. It's quite easy to work with and shape, and it's just a really good solution, I think. So that's basically covering the brake lines. The brake line connector block is in behind there, and then you have two lines that come up and go into your brake master cylinder up here. Again, these lines are already covered with a silicon coated fiberglass heat sleeve, so they already have a massive amount of protection in behind the heat shield. But right here in this position, you have the exhaust housing and the turbo, plus the dump pipes. Hell of a lot of stuff here to get really, really hot. Now, I didn't come up into this section in here because I sort of have a feeling that one of the valve covers on the engine may interfere with this. So I may have to modify this a bit more later, or I may just build a new one if I find that it doesn't interfere, and I can kind of block that in completely, and then maybe come up beside the master cylinder a bit. I have another piece I'm going to build in here beside where your steering shaft is, just to try and block this up. Again, to stop heat belting off the back of this downpipe and going up in behind here, because all of the stuff in that area up there suffered a lot of deterioration from the heat, which you would certainly imagine to be the case going from the location of it all. Okay, what else am I going to be doing in here for heat management wise? I'm going to get some more of this type of stuff, but I'm getting some 5mm fiberglass backed version that's adhesive, and I'm going to attach it to the firewall in behind the dump pipes and down through here and where the catalytic converters are. Now I'll be doing that on both sides, again to give heat protection, to stop heat soak inside the cab from these areas again, because they do sit so close. So I think that's a start anyway, guys. As you can see, I've been very busy with the heat protection, because I feel very strongly about this sort of stuff. Like as I mentioned earlier, back when this car was made, it was fairly groundbreaking in the terms of what was jammed in the engine bay on this thing. A lot of cars were still running like straight sixes, particularly, or straight fours, particularly the Japanese engines. And it was a fairly new thing running a V6 so cramped into an engine bay like this. Whereas nowadays it's pretty commonplace. Lots of cars run V6s, lots of V configuration engines or flat engines, all crammed into really tight areas. And if you have a look at a new vehicle, you'll see how the heat shielding has improved massively compared to something from this era. So that's basically what I'm trying to replicate, is the way that new cars do all their heat shielding compared to cars of this era. And as I say, if you look under any new car, you will find everything has got heat shielding. Every cable, every wire is coated, shielded, wrapped. You know, your firewalls and stuff are all covered in, you know, that kind of material over there. And it's something that they, you know, put a lot of effort into nowadays, which obviously will help prolong the service life of the components and, you know, make the vehicle more comfortable, more reliable, all that kind of stuff. And that's the goal with the Fairlady. Fast, comfortable, reliable, not necessarily in that order. So what I'm about to do is start on this heat shield over here. So if you guys want to come along for the ride with me while I start planning this out with a bit of cardboard, you know, get it all set up, and then we'll knock it up out of some of this perforated aluminium stuff and see what it looks like. As I say, it's very hard working in here. It's very packed in. I could film from the top, but the car's up really high. So we'll see. I don't know how much footage I'll get of the of me kind of nutting it out, but we'll see, guys. I'll do what I can. I'll do what I can. But I'll be back. In some way or another, I'll be back. So this is the basic technique that you've seen me do a ton of times before, guys. It's just a matter of working from nothing and slowly building your way through the template. You know, start with a real basic set out, make a few cuts, trim it, you know, adjust it again, mark a bit more, you know, cut a bit more, measure this, measure that, try and keep everything straight and square and parallel, and, you know, and eventually you'll get to a point where it fits. It does take time, you know, lots of checking and double checking and, you know, making occasional adjustments. Sometimes you'll find you might cut a bit too much off and have to sticky tape a bit more on, or you find that your template's actually too small, just like I'm doing here, and you'll have to add a piece to it. And yeah, and then often that won't work either, so you know, you might have to sort of cut it back off again and trim away until you get to a point where you know, it fits perfectly. And working with cardboard, even though it does take time, it's so much easier than working with anything else. And you know, hopefully you'll get something that's pretty smick. Alrighty, so I think this is just about right now. Cardboard template here. Excuse me, I'll just fit this on and hopefully won't be looking too ridiculous doing it with one hand. Alright, you can see where that's going to go now. Hopefully it should sit like that, but made out of that. So as you would have seen, there's a fixing here, there's another stud sticking out up there. So as you can see, that gives us pretty good cover for that AN feed line there. The biggest issue with this obviously was that big section of aluminium adapters in the middle that I wasn't able to put heat sleeve over. That is something that will absorb heat and heat up, and that's obviously the main thing that we're trying to shield here, and this will just do that job fantastically. So I guess we'll get onto the bench and we'll start making up this out of some of that that dimpled aluminium stuff. Alrighty. Damn it guys, I just lost 20 minutes of footage from my own stupidity. I went to change the camera angles after blabbing on for ages at the bench about what I'm doing and realised I hadn't pushed record. What a goose! Anyway, I'll quickly go back over what I was talking about. So this is the stuff that I'm making the heat shields out of. It's a Car Builders brand, it's an Australian company. It's a double layer aluminium sheet stuff. I don't know whether it's made in Australia or whether they get it in from overseas and just repackage it. But I've used it before, it's great stuff. You can get a similar product out of China, but it's pretty crap. It's nowhere near as good as this local stuff. Yada yada yada, I have no affiliation with them, etc. But it's a decent product, so I use it a bit. Anyway, let's just carry on. So that's a piece there. Well, it was a big piece until I cut the other one out of it. But you can see where we've been cutting away on it. We cut that out of here and I raved on with a big splurge about, you know, cutting it out and using the factory edges, because as I say, it's two pieces that are kind of folded together, and you can see each piece as you get it is doubled over on the edge, and you need to do that with your pieces that you're making up. They also need to be doubled over on the edge, otherwise it's really sharp. So you double it over, it gives it a bit of strength and it makes it nice and smooth so you're not cutting yourself on it. Because as you guys know, working on cars and friggin' cutting yourself, it's one of the biggest hazards of doing it. It's one of my pet peeves. I'm always bloody deburring stuff and taking edges off things, and you know, cutting the ends off cable ties and all that kind of stuff, just to avoid cutting yourself on things, which I did just the other week. Got a big gash on the side of my finger that's just about healed up now, simply from a cable tie that was cut off and left pointy long. I was changing some injectors on my daughter's car, gashed my finger open on a bloody cable tie of all things. Anyway, that's what the product is. It's very easy to work with, it's easy to cut, it's easy to fold and shape, and yeah, it's good stuff. So anyway, let's have a look at our piece. So that's where I am with it now, guys. It's basically cut out, and I'm ready to sort of fold it over. So what you do when you mark it out onto your piece of this stuff, you mark it out, then you mark out another line 10 mil around it, and you use that for your fold. You know, you've got to be certain that you do that, otherwise you'll cut it too short and you won't have anything to fold over. And with this, you can see that's a piece of the factory sheet there that was folded over. I always try to use that wherever I can. So I think that and that piece there are from the factory. So I worked out of a corner. And by doing that, it keeps the two pieces together while you're working it as well. And I usually start on one of the longer sides that I've got cut and fold it over, doing all the big sides first just to keep it together nice and evenly. So that's about where I am, guys. I did crap on about a whole heap of other ridiculous stuff that's probably not worth repeating, but we'll just carry on with this, and we'll get this piece made up. So, like I say, we've got to get it all folded over so that it replicates the size of this, and then we'll start shaping it. So I'll carry on bending these edges. Generally, I just use a pair of pliers or whatever's around to do this. It's not that hard to kind of do. You know, just sort of line up with your edges and start the bend with your pliers, or you can use a vise, anything like the vise here. Put that in the vise, put it down onto the spot, bend it over. You know, like any way that you can bend stuff, you can bend this, because it is really easy to bend. Once you get it to 90 degrees, it's pretty easy to finish just with your hands. And then what I do, which I mentioned on the stupid stuff that I didn't record, flattening it out, I generally tend to only flatten the fold, because it tends to muck up the pattern on the aluminium and sort of flattens it off. If you bash it with a hammer down on the edge, it flattens it down, but it doesn't sort of destroy your pattern too much. So that's what I do. Light tap, and you can see we've folded it over without flattening it, and it will flatten off real easy, and it does look a little bit funny when you do that. And you can see that's sort of gone down nice now. We've got a nice non-cutting you edge on there, which is always good to have. Alright, so I'll shut up, I'll get all this cut out and bent up, and then we'll come back to it. So we now have our basic shape, guys. You can see we're pretty good, pretty reasonable match. We've crept in a few little spots, but nothing too big. And now we will start to fold it. So I reckon I can probably sneak a little bit of that out there and put a fold in that edge. It doesn't really need it. It's not a spot that's going to worry it. Anyway, let's get some folds in this sucker. Basically, guys, that's our heat shield. Looks not bad in my opinion, not bad at all. We just need to make a few holes in it to match these ones here, and we should be good to go. So what I'm doing here, guys, I'm trying to create a little bit of a raised section on the bottom so that the whole thing doesn't sit against the paintwork. Really, when you've got bigger sections, it's more of an issue, but the biggest problem we're doing this is trying not to tear the outside corner as you're doing it, you know. But it's generally pretty successful. So I'm obviously just going to start this with a little drill, and then I'm going to use a step drill on it. If you try and drill a proper hole, you will catch and tear the stuff because it is pretty soft. We're only going for a 6mm hole, so we'll just go into that size. So obviously, it's not super accurate doing these holes, but they should be close enough that we can get something. Alright, let's take it under and have a little bit of a look at it, eh? Alrighty, time for the test. So, good you are, Trevor. Alright, so, as I was saying, the whole purpose of this is to shield all these aluminium fittings, which will absorb a ton of heat, including all these AC fittings. We've done all the pipe work, here and here, all with fiberglass backed silicone, and here with the fiberglass backed aluminium tape and foam and everything in behind there, but the fittings themselves, being aluminium, they will suck up a ton of heat. So stop babbling, Trevor, and put the bloody piece on. I'm a bit scared that it won't fit and you'll laugh at me, but here we go. Alright, one-handed. That's one on. Oh, that's the other one on. Alright, so far so good. That's that. Sitting there in position. Looks pretty bloody good to me, folks. Alright, I'll get that bolted on, and then I will drop the car, and we'll have a look at these guys from the top, eh? Alright guys, so now that it's back down, and we can look at it from a different perspective, it looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with it. Looks like I've jagged it, I've nailed it in one. So I can't see any issues with that one. I don't think there'll be any clearance issues with anything else. But honestly, I won't be 100% sure until the engine goes back in. And at this stage, I'm probably looking at another test fit with the engine after I get a lot more of this sort of stuff completed, I think. I've now done the back piece of that as well, and it's all pretty good. I don't think there's really going to be any issues with that. Again, I probably really need to get the engine back in and do a test fit. Just make sure there's no valve cover or exhaust manifold issues by me extending that heat shield where I have. So overall, I think that's going to be quite a good thing at this stage, but as I mentioned earlier, there is more to do. Definitely more heat shielding is needed on the firewall and around the exhaust, particularly where the catalytic converters are. But that's a subject for another video. So I hope you like that, guys. It was probably a little bit slow just watching me cut out templates and then make these heat shields, but for an educational video, what are you going to do? You've really got to show the stuff that you're doing to really give the full story, don't you? Anyway, thanks for stopping by the Aussie Shed. Always a bloody pleasure to have you here. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and as always, I'll bloody well see you on the next one. Cheers.